Thank you very much, Maartje, and I'm very, very happy to be here again at the WIPO conference. WIPO has been part of my family for over 20 years now, since 1995 when it was established at UNCTAD, and I'm always very happy to see a full room of WIPO members. This morning I'm the first speaker on the Sustainable Development. I will therefore go a little bit also through some of the general issues, so to make those who are not that familiar with it yet a little bit more grab the subject, because the SDGs is something that we use the whole day as an abbreviation, but not everybody is so familiar with it. So I will talk a little bit about the SDGs, why we think that investment promotion agencies should be involved in this particular area, in reaching these goals and targets that are related to it, and then also what agencies need to do to reorient themselves and their activities towards this. As some of you know, we have described that in publications and we have talked about it before. Investment promotion went through several phases over the last 20, 30 years. We have distinguished first three phases. The first was the liberalisation of national investment regimes by countries. What happened in the 70s and 80s and still continues, but the big opening up of economies to foreign direct investment started in the 80s. Then in the 90s, as well, in some countries even way before that, investment promotion was seen by governments as a public function. And they started to set up these agencies, the agencies that you work in now. Some of them are much older, like UKTI. It goes back to the colonial times and was transformed over many years into now a very effective agency dealing with investment and trade promotion, but other agencies came up like mushrooms in the 90s, especially in Eastern Europe, and the whole Eastern Europe opened up. And we have, I'm not having it here, but we produce graphs on this growth, this mushrooming of IPAs, first at the national level, afterwards subnational levels, city levels, etc. So that we call the second phase in the marketing, what we call it, the phase of the marketing of countries. Countries' locations wanted to be put on the map for foreign investment. Then there became a third phase in which a much more targeted approach was set up, in which agencies were really looking at particular sectors in line with their national strategies of governments and trying to promote those sectors and trying to get foreign investment into it. We are now looking at a new phase in which we would like investment promotion agencies to look more closer at the Sustainable Development Goals, the goals that their governments have committed themselves to, and see in how far they can contribute to that. So that is a phase that I'm going to talk about now. And to work on that, there's several gaps that need to be filled. There's the productive investment gap. As you may know, after the crisis 2007, 2008, foreign direct investment, the recovery of that has been very bumpy. We had several years of, 3 years, I believe, of increases of FDI, but even more years, 4 years of declines. Last year we had an increase of not less than 38%. We're very upbeat about that. But when you look at those figures more closely, you see that most of that increase was due to mergers and acquisitions, which is not really translated into an increase of productive capacity in countries. So that is an issue that investment promotion has to deal with also in the context of the SDGs, because economic growth is needed to fulfill those. Then you have the Sustainable Development Goals investment gap. We did an estimation in 2014 at UNCTAD, and we think that globally between 5 to 7 trillion US dollars is needed to reach the goals annually. So annually is needed to reach the goals in 2030. It means 15 years of mobilizing 5 to 7 trillion US dollars to get investments into infrastructure projects, into climate change, mitigation, adaptation, into education, into the health sector, etc. So it is a lot of money. If you look at developing countries alone, the gap is even bigger. But I will show that in a minute. I don't want to jump the slides. And then we have the systemic policy gap. We looked at investment policies, regimes of countries, and we looked at investment promotion and facilitation measures that were taken, policies were taken. And there we found that there has been a lack of policies in the area of investment facilitation. I will illustrate that in a graph in a few minutes. We had that also covered in our World Investment Report this year, and so we think there is a gap in investment facilitation measures that needs to be filled to channel, to mobilize and channel FDI towards SDG projects. This is then the first, this comes back to the first, the productive investment gap issue that I mentioned. And here you can see, oh sorry, now I'm making a mistake. Where is the, here. Here you can see that after the economic and financial crisis in 2007, how bumpy the recovery of FDI has been. We had this big increase last year, but as I said, a lot of that was due to corporate reconfigurations, M&As, in pharmaceutical sectors, in other sectors, manufacturing sectors, sometimes because of tax evasion, consolidations, had to do also with the slum in demand for certain industries. It also had to do with the low interest rates, the finance available on the markets. But we expect a decline again this year. So this recovery goes up and down and up and down. And if you see in the many years before, it was much more an upgoing trend. So that gap needs to be filled. We need to have to get FDI back to its to growth, and multinationals are sitting on a lot of cash, but they are very hesitant at the moment to invest. Of course, there's a huge difference between different sectors and different activities in global value chains, but I don't want to go in. I'm talking about generalities at the moment. The SDG investment gap that I talked about, this is for developing countries alone. Sorry. This is for, is he on? This is for developing countries alone. You can hear me all, right? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. The money that is needed to reach the 17 sustainable development goals in developing countries will cost 3.9 trillion US dollars a year, as we estimated. It's actually between, I think, 3.6 and 4.5, but the range is around 3.9 trillion US dollars. Now, at the moment, if you look at public and private investment in these sectors, 1.4 trillion at the moment is invested in infrastructure, education, health sector, etc., in developing countries. 1.4 trillion US dollars. That keeps a gap of 2.5 trillion annually. So who's going to fill that gap? It cannot be the public sectors in developing countries. They don't have that money. It cannot also be the domestic private sector in developing countries. They may have some money to contribute, but it is not enough. For a large part, a role has to be played by foreign direct investment. So that is what we are talking about today. And this is the other gap that I was mentioning, the systemic policy gap. We looked at investment promotion and facilitation policies, and we saw that only less than a quarter is in the investment facilitation field. Most of these measures are policies on investment incentives, special economic zones. So here also a role has to be played by the policymakers in making a turn and looking more at the facilitation of investment in their locations. So from this, what do we have to promote then when we talk about the SDGs? And these are then the 17 SDGs. Probably most of you are familiar with this slide, and maybe some of my colleagues will use them again. In foreign direct investment, there are several of them that foreign direct investment can contribute to several of them. Not all of them, most of them, but there are several, like good jobs in economic growth. Foreign direct investment definitely plays a role in it. It's an area that UNCTAD works in, that ILO works in decent jobs, decent work. Number 9, innovation and infrastructure. It's also an area that UNIDO works in. Then you have the Habitat Conference this month, sustainable cities and communities. Even yesterday night we were, I was working on a paper that we put up for the Habitat 3 in Quito conference, in which we look at how the role of FDI in the sustainable development of cities. We had a conference in Nairobi during the WIF, the World Investment Forum. Some of you were there, which we focused on urban cities. It was hosted by the mayor, the governor of Nairobi, in which we especially looked at the role of FDI in cities. On the basis of that, we did a discussion paper for Habitat 3, that they also look at FDI issues. And then, of course, renewable energy. FDI has a big role to play in that, and we just finalized a project that we had for several years with investment promotion agencies, looking at how they could attract foreign direct investment into the renewable sector, especially in the solar energy sector. Many IPAs have that now on their agenda. And that is definitely one of the contributions that IPAs can play to the SDGs. So how are we going to promote, as IPAs, these SDGs? This is a slide that shows, first in the center, your core activities, the promotion, the targeting, and the facilitation. And then around it, all these partners that you will need. Because investment promotion is not done in isolation. Investment promotion is a job that you do with other government agencies, with other stakeholders within the country, outside the country. And we identified several groupings of those. Now, first I would like to show you 2 slides on the targeting and facilitation part, and then about the different partners, and also then the changes that a refocus towards the SDGs brings to your work. This is then targeting SDG projects. Now, if you want to target SDG projects, you need to do several things. You have to first develop expertise in this area, because traditional investment promotion agencies, they have experts in several manufacturing sectors, sometimes in agriculture, in services, but they don't really have experts on infrastructure, on education, on health. So you have to build up that expertise. And you cannot do that overnight. This is a process that needs to be done over the years, in which you have to set priorities. You first have to say, okay, we're going to look at the renewable energy sector. We're going to set up a unit on that. We set up a team. We're going to get some outside expertise into the IPA, and we're going to work on the development of some business opportunities in this particular sector. And that is something we have been helping IPAs with in the last few years. In Kenya we had a project, in India we had a project in which we helped them in developing model project proposals on solar energy. Had also all the stakeholders around the table to discuss this, discuss the policies that were needed to open up the sector, to facilitate all these investments, etc. So this is, you can start with a specific sector and then build that and over the years towards others. So that is a way to do it. You have to prioritize, you have to organize, you have to build your expertise, you have to prepare pipelines of what we call bankable SDG projects, and then you have to market those projects. On facilitation, because we saw this big gap in investment facilitation policies, we have produced a menu which is available online with what we call 10 action lines, over 40 policy options that you can have. I would just advise you to go into it. I don't want to go into detail in it. It's a workshop by itself. But yeah, of course, in general, you have to increase your transparency, your predictability within your policies. Your administrative procedures, you have to review them, make them more efficient. But also, for instance, what we advise is to have some kind of a mediator for disputes between investors and government agencies. So it is a whole menu that you can pick from, but definitely more attention should be given to that particular issue. Now I want to say something about the different partners. Investment promotion agencies always had partners. You have your traditional partners, and I try to develop this to make it a little bit, to give you an oversight from what I like to say. So the private sector groups have always been partners of IPAs. You had the chambers of commerce, you have your manufacturing association, you have your sectoral chambers, sometimes you have the Italian, the German chambers, etc. They have always been linked to these investment promotion agencies, and that is a very, very good relationship to have. So those, they will stay in the old setting, in the new setting. Then you have your government ministries. Traditionally, IPAs have been working with the Ministry of Trade, the Ministry of Industry, the Prime Minister's Office, Ministry of Finance sometimes, but you have to broaden that as well. You have to now set up relationships with the Ministry of Health, with the Ministry of Education, the ministry that deals with infrastructure development, Ministry of Energy. So that range has to be broadened. That means that there may be more work to do. You may have to rethink also your staffing to find people that can make the time to broaden that network within government. You need to identify projects, and for that you need the ministries. You need also local authorities for that. That is part of the other stakeholders. Traditionally, other stakeholders, yeah, you have, let me have a look, because you have your TPOs, the trade promotion agencies, organizations. You have the EPZs, the export processing zones. Many IPAs have long-term relationships with those. Many IPAs even do the management of export processing zones, something we don't advise. Yeah, I mean, politics is politics. Politicians, they shift functions from one agency to the other. But we prefer always that investment promotion doesn't do any regulatory functions, only promotion and facilitation functions. You should not get these functions because if you're the regulator and the promoter, there's a conflict of interest there, and you should not have that in this particular work. So these are the traditional agencies that you have, the TPOs, the EDAs, is there, and the industrial zones. But there are some new stakeholders now involved. You may have to look, you have to talk with some NGOs that focus on SDGs, and some IPAs are already doing that. There was an IPA in Africa that we worked with. They had a policy review done by an NGO on the renewable energy sector. So you can get them involved. They can do part of your work, and they're happy to do part of your work. So they want to get involved. So use those resources from outside to work with. Local governments you have to work with. If you want to do particular projects locally, you have to get the local authorities involved. You need the land. You need the land allocations. It's very, very often done by local governments. So and you need to know what they want. With all this, with the SDG on food security, agriculture needs to be looked at. For that, you will need local governments to work with you. And then you have the SDG investors and donors. You may have to sit on the table with some of the local representatives of donor agencies and see how they can help with these projects. If there are any co-financing possible in some of these projects. And already examples out there in which, and some of them we have even put on paper. So if you're interested in that, I can direct you to some of the online publications on some of the examples in which development banks, for instance, have worked with IPAs in setting up projects in the health or education sector. Now, on the next slide, I would like to talk a little bit about the context for potential investors. IPAs have always been traditionally working with multinational enterprises, or TNCs, the transnational corporations, as we call them before. This is still a slide from BF 2014 when we used the transnational corporations terminology. Now, there's a lot of money there at TNCs. They have 25 trillion US dollars in stocks all over the world, of which I believe 1/3 is in developing countries. So already quite a lot of that is allocated to its developing countries. But there is a lot of money out there as well, which can be used for and this is trillions that we talk about. Yes, trillions of US dollars. Banks are already involved, but can be much more involved, also in SDG projects. Development banks already are, but commercial banks can as well. Pension funds, at the moment, I think only 2% of the assets of pension funds, as well as insurance companies, is momentarily invested in infrastructure. If that can be doubled, for instance, that will be already a huge amount of money. For insurance companies, for instance, they may be very hesitant to move into this area, but there are companies already looking into, for instance, in the climate change adaptation goal or target. If they invest now in some prevention measures for floods, infrastructure projects against floods or other disasters, that will give them savings into claims in the future. So there is an interest from them to get involved in large projects that are related to the climate change goal, SDG. But so for each of these, and then you have the sovereign wealth funds with over 6 trillion US dollars. Now they are already getting involved in infrastructure projects, and we had several World Investment Forums, we had platforms with heads of sovereign wealth funds talking about how they try to increase their portfolio in this particular area. So IPAs have to start looking at different potential investors. But I have to prepare for that as well, because these are very specific projects that needs preparation. Co-financing very often, risk mitigation, through participation of the public sector as well. So then we going into the discussion of the PPPs, the public-private sector projects. That is a whole new discussion, but that definitely comes into mind when we talk about getting these financiers involved. Then a few other corporations that IPAs should get involved in, and I put here 2 examples that we also recently worked with and over the years have been working with. That is CAIPA. They are here today. That is a successful association that of IPAs that work together into putting regions on the map for foreign investors. CAIPA has 19 members, I believe. Of course, this is not something you do in isolation. There has to also be on the political level some kind of an association. Now they have the CARICOM in the Caribbean. They have, I think they have a single market by now. Same with in Eastern Europe, in Eastern Africa, we have 6 countries now with South Sudan, who recently entered this year entered the East African Community. There is a lot of political will there to come to a single market in Eastern Africa. They have went to several phases already, and at the World Investment Forum we saw we organized several specific events attracting investment to Eastern Africa, in which we had politicians on the podium who showed how much they're working on harmonizing their policy, investment policies, which is all needed if you want to work with investment promotion agencies also together to get investment towards the region, and that these investments can make use of a larger market. So these are things that IPA should work on as well. I know I'm putting a lot of on your agenda, but these are all the different partnerships that you have to think of. And last but not least, and this is an easy one, get involved, get partnerships with outward investment agencies. And there are quite a lot around. We did studies on that. This is an example of a cut flower company in Ethiopia. Now, recently there have been some political issues there. You may be aware of it. I've been involved as a little involvement in trying to get the cut flower industry in Ethiopia going with the Ethiopian Investment Agency. Over the years, I've seen that industry really booming around Addis Ababa. Unfortunately, momentarily there are some political issues, and there have been some of these companies have been burned down even. So that shows how difficult this work is. It takes you many years and many years to build. And then because civil society wasn't enough involved in the project, probably, you can have things happening that are unfortunate. I hope that they will find a solution very quickly, because you don't want to lose a whole sector that you build up with so much effort, with thousands of people working in it, because of these issues. So investment promotion is something that you have to get a lot of stakeholders involved to get it work well. But that is not what I'm discussing. I'm discussing the outward investment agencies here. The outward investment agencies that can play a very big role. I'm talking about agencies that actually help their investors from their country to invest abroad. They only do that. Then we're talking about financial institutions who do this kind of work. That give soft loans, that give grants to investors that want to set up projects in developing countries related to the SDGs. We looked at over 100 of these institutions, and we found that 45% have special programs in place to help investments in the SDGs. And then, of course, you have the investment guarantee schemes that are very important to cover business and political risks. So these are agencies that you have to seek partnerships with. And I'm very happy to say that we will start in November with a special project on that, in trying to bring IPAs and OIAs together, and try also through this partnership to develop project proposals, template of project proposals in different sectors that can be used by IPAs, and that also useful for these finance institutions, so that they match the kind of requirements that these institutions have to help their investors to invest in these projects. So this on the partnerships. Then I would like to close with with two slides on some of the services that we provide. Many of you are familiar with them, but we work in the area of investment facilitation and promotion. We provide advice to IPAs. We do training for investment promotion officials, but also for diplomats. We think that there is a role to play for diplomats in promoting investment to their countries. We have a special training program for that, and I will be doing that, for instance, in Jordan next month, and we will do that in December in Egypt. Egypt, we have been doing that for many years, in which we train young diplomats before they go to their first post, and commercial attachés in how they can promote investment towards Egypt. There's some countries who are very professional in that, and we use then also diplomats from those countries to share their experiences on how they do this kind of work. We have investment policy reviews in which we look at your policy environment and give advice. We provide assistance in international investment agreements, training, capacity building. We have, of course, the World Investment Forum as a platform. Then we have the UNCTAD Investment Promotion Awards every year for the exchange of best practices. Linkages programs, investment guides we produce online. We just did one for Antigua, and e-regulations program. Some of you agencies already have that. in which you put all the regulatory framework on a website that investors can do half of the work, even for with not traveling to your country. Then we have a greenfdi.org platform, and that's the next slide. For those who are interested in targeting the green investment, as we call it, this is then investment in the renewable energy sector, but also in the greening of your industries. Then you can visit this website. It has about 300 publications, so we try to update all the time. These are not only UNCTAD publications, publications from all over the world that we think in this particular sector are relevant for IPA, so you can browse those. We have a global network. Every month we send out news flashes with issues that we think are important for IPAs. They're all also being posted on the Smart Promotion Network on the website. And then we recently opened a window also to put up investment opportunities. So IPAs who want to put green-related investment opportunities on this website, they're free to do so. You contact us and we can provide you with a link to put it on. We already have put some links ourselves to website of IPAs that promote green investment. With this slide, I would like to close. I'm open for any questions that you have. Question there? Behind you.
Thank you for your presentations. I am Yunus Emre. I'm working for Development Agency. Your presentation proposed we have to have a new investment promotion agenda oriented with sustainable development goals, but which can generate some conflicts with investors and investment promoters, or investors and ecological NGOs, or investor and local authorities, or investor and etc., or which generates and decrease in speed of FDIs. What's your strategy about for solutions of this situation?
Thank you for that question. To be honest, there's always potential for conflict with traditional investors as well as with those investors that you try to attract for the SDGs. So I don't think that there is a new scenario here. In fact, I think there is more agreement on investments in the SDGs because they are sustainable or supposed to be sustainable in an environmental and social way than before. When you look at multinational enterprises, they also get more and more sensitive towards these issues. They cannot ignore this anymore. You cannot make T-shirts anymore in a corner of the world without any sustainability issues being addressed. There are too many people watching these days. So in that sense, I think the MNEs are on board. In fact, they are asking countries for better regulations on these issues, that they can show their stockholders, their clients, that they're doing the right thing. So I see less conflict instead of more conflict with addressing these issues more closely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mike, it's coming.
Thank you. I'm Her Royal Highness Princess Sdg from Burkina Faso and also the Ambassador of Renewable Energy for Burkina Faso. My question is, in your presentation, which is wonderful and giving us a lot of data, I was wondering, you talk about a template for the countries. So Africa, as often we pilot one country, and we're trying to bring that example to others. I think that this will be important to consider on adapting a local context. This is very important. And also in the presentation, I miss in the supportive partners, the local private sector. This is very important as well. That's what I would suggest. And on slide number 10, what I notice also is, maybe not slide number 10, but for how about the pension fund? Often they're investing as a private local banks. They don't look for long term, and it's important. What is your strategy to bring them to go more and the long term investment to help those investment promotion centers to move forward?
So your question is how to get the local banks more involved in this project?
The pension funds.
The pension funds.
Because they are looking also for a quick return on investment.
And the pension funds not necessarily look for quick return.
That's the reality on the field. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean...
It's got to open the dialogue on this one and bring them more into long-term
that is very true. And we have been using the World Investment Forum to do that. We had representatives of the Netherlands Pension Fund, the Danish Pension Fund, the Norwegians also have a big pension fund, to at least start the discussion with us and with the countries on this. So there's a role to play for organizations like UNCTAD, and we're trying to do that. It is very difficult, I think, for individual IPAs to make that approach. So we try to do that on international platforms. Yeah, our task is also to make investment motion agencies aware of the fact that there is a lot of potential there. You see also that Western governments are at the moment looking at their own pension funds to finance their infrastructure projects in the UK, for instance. So pension funds are getting more and more used to the fact that they have to look at this more closely as part of their portfolio. There is also a public demand for that, instead of the investments that they have been making so far to secure the pensions of their that they're supposed to cover. So yes, it is true that there's a role for us to play. I thought you said also something about local banks, but it's
the local private sector.
Oh, the local private sector. No, I will definitely involve them. There's a very important role to play for them. I already mentioned the linkages program the business linkages program that we have, but they were in the slide. I mentioned the chambers of commerce and the manufacturing association. So for me, that is for large part the local business community that is always in contact with the investment promotion agencies. I had a gentleman there that had his hand up for a while. The gentleman there.
Yeah. Mr. Wessendorp, thank you so much for your presentation, which is very informative to me. My name is Dr. William Wood. I'm with the International Reiki Society, presently based Kyoto, Japan, and Washington, D.C., relocating to Istanbul corporate headquarters. But I think I don't look like a banker, I don't believe. So the language you speak is a little bit foreign to me. It doesn't come in a translation on the translator, because I deal in issues of the human heart. And as a psychoanalyst and a Reiki practitioner, president-elect of the Reiki Society 2017-2018. But when you mention outward-looking agencies to connect with, and mention, I believe, the Tanzania cut flower industry.
Yeah, I was talking about Ethiopia. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Ethiopia, excuse me. Please forgive me, I'm sorry, I get confused easily. Ethiopian cut flower industry. You hit upon a subject there that is fascinating to me. I'd like further direction in terms of where to understand this further. The human heart is involved in money. It is not just in a bank cold vault someplace, but a human being is connected to that in some fashion, perhaps remotely. And that human being has a heart and a soul. That is my personal belief. I don't want to impose that upon anybody, please. But that human being then makes decisions, investments, financial, that sometimes go against the current of the society. Ethiopia, apparently, you said, was set back by some warfare, troubles of the human heart that made it difficult. And you mentioned the fact that it takes years for some of these investment goals to be achieved. I'm just wondering, coming from my standpoint, which is a non-financial investment standpoint, but coming into the WIPA community and wanting to understand and work with this community as a man who deals with issues of the human heart, where can I understand further that connection between your experience, for example, in Ethiopia, money, and human beings who have ups and downs, good days, bad days, warfare, victories, defeats? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a difficult question. How I deal with that. No, I mean, investment, as I said, is very complex, and you have to make sure that all the stakeholders involved are one way or the other satisfied with a project. If an investor puts his money into it, it's a long-term thing. Investment is different than trade. Trade is a short-term transaction. Investment is a long-term transaction. So you have to make sure that all the parties are happy with that. And there are some locations where their political risks are a little bit higher than that. You can insure yourself against that as an investor. If you talk about the human heart, I don't know which human heart you talk about the people that are affected by the investments, or the investors themselves. I don't think you're referring to those. No. Now, I mean, I have seen with projects that investors have been trying to be they have to be trying to take as many social and environmental issues into consideration as possible. Of course, we have been working with investors who are willing to do so. There are other investments that we are not monitoring or have no doing with, so I cannot talk about those. But we have seen quite some commitment by investors to take care of social and environmental issues, and also to link up with NGOs that provide them sustainability how do you call this? That they get some kind of a certification, a sustainability certification, for social and environmental sustainability. I've seen that in the cut flower industry in Colombia. I visited there, one of these cut flower companies that with the NGO that provide that sustainability stamp every year, that have inspections of the farms, etc. So there is a lot of happening in this particular area, and we very much encourage that. So I would like to leave it there. Okay, I was just told that I need to stop. We can, after the presentations, but I have many others. Can we do this after? Because otherwise the other speakers. Okay.
Hello, this is Cihangir Tekcan. I am the founder and CEO of Majestic Group of Companies, and I'm also the General Director of New Turkey magazine in Turkey. I welcome all our guests to Turkey as the host. I would like to thank you for your all presentation, because you have to adjust your presentation in accordance with the new power, the shift of new power paradigm. Because after 15th of July, the power paradigm has already shifted from west to east. And Turkey, as a global actor in the world, will lead to the uprisal of Eastern nations. And if you also consider the fact that the hedge funds in US have already transferred their funds to China, Singapore, and Hong Kong, it's already time for you to adjust and revise your old presentation, sir. This is my comment.
Okay.
From Majestic Group of Companies from Turkey. And in this respect, we look forward to hearing new updated presentations from your side. Thank you.
Okay, no, but that is fine. I mean, I don't see which part you were referring to, because for us it's north, south, south, north, west, east, etc. So there's not particular any direction I was referring.
If you happen to read Financial Times,
Yeah.
you know, you will get the best intelligence from them, actually. All right?
I'm prescribed to them, so I will.